Abraham Lincoln warned that the philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. Would you like to know what's being taught in today's classrooms? Welcome to Say What? With attorney Mark Schneider and Pastor George Rosca Jr. They'll explore the issues facing children, parents, and society as a result of the public schools and the forces behind them. Say What is the radio program of Protect Our Kids, which seeks to inform and equip concerned citizens about the looming crisis in American education. So listen in as your hosts, Mark Schneider and George Rosca Jr., unpack the issues and organizations affecting our children. And now here's your hosts, Mark Schneider and George Rosca Jr.
Hello everyone, I'm George Rosca.
And I'm Mark Schneider.
And we want to welcome you to episode 153 of Say What, where we talk about the threats to our children in the public school system, including the forced re-education of public school teachers in the name of, you know what it is, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's right, George. You know, this kind of brainwashing is happening across the nation. But today, George, we're going to highlight several examples from school districts. In this case, it just happens to be in California, but from San Francisco all the way down to San Diego, that require teachers now to both sign on to and endorse the woke worldview. What is the woke worldview? This is something that you and I have talked about a lot, but it needs more conversation because wokeism is an extreme form of self-absorption where one's perception of reality, no matter how removed from reason, must be accepted now as fact, if need be, by the force of law. And we see this in ethnic studies curriculums where kids are encouraged to identify themselves with as many so-called intersectional identities as they possibly can, whether based on skin color, economic status, language, disability, even housing. In fact, the list is endless, George, and results in multiple and overlapping forms of personal grievance. You know, we hear people talking about the grievance culture. This is where it comes from. But most often we see it in sexual identities, along the ever-expanding catalog of LGBTQIA. The list goes just on and on. Wokeism is really a form of idolatry where you are your own idol. No wonder Elon Musk has called it a mind virus. In fact, a civilizational destroying mind virus. And now it's being woven into a culture of indoctrination where teachers are both recruited and expected to push the party line. So what we thought we would do to give evidence to what we're talking about is share example training sessions that teachers are put through in different school districts across the state. And we need to mention this is not only happening in California. It's not restricted here. This is happening across the country. But since we live here, we get a lot of this material.
Definitely.
And so we're going to use it as an example.
Well, we have as a first example from San Francisco Unified School District, Mark, a set of slides, right? Or what they have here is handouts.
Yeah, these were slides that actually were presented in these teacher training sessions. Sometimes, George, they're exhaustive. I mean, in the hundreds of pages long. So these are not short training sessions that teachers go through. These are like half-day to all-day sessions.
Wow.
That they're put through. And this particular one, again, it comes out of the San Francisco Unified School District, and we may not be particularly surprised by that. But this one happens to do with pronouns. In fact, I guess the training was held on the International Pronouns Day. In fact, the opening slide says, referring to people by the pronouns they determine for themselves is basic human dignity. And George, this isn't that new. This goes back to 2021. So this has been around for a while.
I think, Mark, you and I should just start International Reality Day. Just make it a self-proclaimed day. I don't know how they come up with this stuff.
There is certainly a need for it. Well, you know, we're just going to read from a few of these slides. The second slide starts out, International Pronouns Day seeks to make respecting, sharing, and educating about personal pronouns commonplace. Don't wait for Pride to talk about pronouns, meaning Pride Month. That's the June. That's June. This is to teachers now, use the following slides to briefly explain pronouns to your students, including the singular they personal pronoun. The more exposure students have, the more commonplace it will become. And then they give a website. You can find out more about this at pronounsday.org.
And these are the same students that are being taught proper grammar, hopefully. And this is confusing.
We're going to discover just how confusing it is. In fact, they are changing the very rules of grammar to accommodate these personal pronouns. Here's another slide, George. Practice using gender-neutral terms to avoid making assumptions about people. We certainly don't want to do that. And these are all quotes. Instead of using men and women, use the pronoun everyone. Instead of wife or husband, use spouse. Instead of he or she, use them. Instead of sister or brother, use sibling. And they give many other examples of this. You have to ask yourself, what kind of culture are we setting up here? This has been going on for years now. The next slide talks about queering identity. Gender expression is how you show your gender identity. Gender identity, how you feel you are inside. That is at the heart of wokeism. It's all about how you feel, how you determine reality, not what is reality, how you feel inside. Sexual orientation. This is a direct quote. This is what teachers are teaching kids. Who you want to get squishy with.
Oh my goodness. Say what?
Sex assigned at birth, a label. It's just a label given at birth based on your body parts. May not be real. It's just based on your body parts. And of course, George, as you know, they always refer to this slide, this teaching tool that we see everywhere in the public schools now, named the gender unicorn.
And we've been tracking this one for a long time because it has had its own evolution. Starting from the genderbread man.
The genderbread person.
And then genderbread person, and now the gender unicorn.
Yeah. In fact, when it first started out, I guess they were too not androgynous enough. They actually looked like normal human beings. Well, we can't have that because your perception of yourself exists along a spectrum that may not be either male or female. Hence the gender unicorn, where everything from gender identity to expression to your sex, who you're attracted to, exists on this wide spectrum that teachers are now required to teach in the classroom.
If I would be a unicorn, Mark, I would actually claim that the sexual revolutionary colonialists are taking over my unicorn status. This is like an affront to me as a unicorn.
Well, I think you would be right in sync with the zeitgeist of the moment, George, because that's what's happening. Well, then we have another slide, and again, there are hundreds. We don't have time to go through all of these, but just to give you another example of what teachers are being forced to teach now. Using they, them pronouns, using the singular they. They, them, theirs are pronouns just like she, her, hers, and he, him, his. They, them, their can be used exactly the same as she and he. Now, they give an example. She walked into the store. He walked into the store. They walked into the store. And things to remember, when using they, them, their, you're referring to a singular person.
Say what?
And then they have the goal to say this, George. Grammar rules still work. You would say they are instead of they is, even though you're talking about one person. I'm reading verbatim here. It's okay to mess up. Just respect those who correct you and try to use their preferred pronouns next time. Example, Ray is my friend. They are great. I have so much in common with them. They give me their favorite baseball card. You will meet them soon. Or what about Mr., Mrs., and Mrs.? The gender-neutral pronoun for these circumstances is MX, pronounced mix. Example, That's Mrs. Smith, Mr. Green, and Mix Robinson. We're not making this up, George. We're not making this up. And it gets worse. As we've talked about before on other programs, the schools have double books now. They have a set of books that students and teachers are privy to with regard to how kids identify their gender, and books that the parents and the rest of legal society is privy to. And here's an example. Here's a slide they have where they're asking the student, what is your official name? And it's called the Elementary Name and Pronoun Information Sheet. So this isn't middle school and high school. This is targeted to elementary school students. And then they ask the question, what name would you like me to call you in class? What name would you like me to use with your grown-ups? George, this is so deceptive. We've often warned, and we've been labeled Cassandras, for making false accusations that schools are depriving parents the right to bring up their own children in the way they see fit. This is a perfect example of how schools are overriding parents and hiding things from parents.
It's all about their parental secrecy policies.
Yeah, and then we have more extensive forms where what goes on a school record, what to call you in class, what pronouns to use when I contact your home, and then pretty intrusive things. Tell me 3 things about yourself. This could be interesting facts, hobbies, or just things you want me to know about you. So they're searching for information about the child's inner life.
And that's all part of the data mining that happens through social emotional learning as well.
Absolutely. And then, they give more and more examples of alternative, what they call neo-pronouns, new pronouns. Taking our example of they, the subject pronoun, they laughed, object pronoun, I called them, possessive adjectives, their eyes gleam, possessive pronouns, that is theirs, reflexive pronouns, they like themselves. Again, George, referring to a single person. And that they is not the only pronoun. There's a list here, ni, thee. Here's one I've never even heard of, spivak.
That's what I was looking at.
ZZ and her, ZZ and zer, and then XE. I'm not even sure how that's pronounced. And they have these same grammatical rules for all of them. It's just unbelievable, George. And then you go down, and of course they have, I'm not sure how this particular training session lasted. I'm assuming it's at least a half day because of the number of slides that they have. And then they have background materials for teachers to further explore. And of course, these are from, the common people that are in this industry.
Yep.
It's all about pursuing and advancing the woke worldview. Well, if you think it's just San Francisco, you would be wrong. Because the next example we're going to take is from the San Diego Unified School District.
And this one's long.
It's a huge school district as well. This one is 247 pages.
Say what?
Yeah. And the opening slide is entitled Facilitator Training, Workshops for LGBTQ Youth and Allies, an ally, of course, being the teacher community. What are the objectives of this training? We're going to learn specific ways to create and sustain affirming spaces for LGBTQ youth, identify LGBTQ youth resources in San Diego, review the curriculum, Love Your Body, Safer Sex, and Healthy Relationships. As an introduction, they're going to ask the teachers now what their name is, of course, and what their preferred gender pronouns are, what their school and position is, and their plan for using this curriculum.
That last one, that one's interesting. This is probably the first time I've seen something like that.
That is key. And you're going on record now that you're actually going to use this. Then, of course, they start giving definitions. Like a real common one is the gender binary. This is a quote, is a social construct. That's all it is. That situates male and female as synonymous with man and woman and dictates how people assigned to these categories should act. This limited system excludes and oppresses trans, non-binary, intersex, and gender non-conforming people. And then they talk about cisgender, those evil cisgenders. Anyone whose sex assigned at birth aligns with their gender identity.
This one, I think it's a pejorative term. When people, even at work, use that, I tell them I'm offended by it. I'm not a cisgender person. Just because my mind reflects the reality of who I am biologically, don't call me that.
I think you're an outlier, George, at least in the public school system. Another slide, how to be an ally to trans people. And then they have these bullet points. Respect all gender identities, whether they comport with reality or not. Don't make assumptions about anyone's gender or sexuality. Here's a good one, George. Unlearn gender policing.
What in the world is that?
I'm assuming that you want to unlearn your prior biases for assuming that gender is someone's biological sex. Here's one that is law now in California, degender bathrooms. But teachers, the onus is on you now to start policing this. Take the burden off of trans people. Personal gender pronouns are what a person should be referred to as. Respect everyone's right to define themselves. You are your own idol, George.
Wokeism at its core.
It really is. What about privilege? Well, here's a slide that defines privilege. Benefits that members of dominant groups at the expense of members of target groups, typically invisible to people who have such privilege. It results in institutional power. What about heterosexual and cisgender privilege? Well, that's the societal assumption that all people are heterosexual and or cisgender. Civil rights and social privileges that a heterosexual cisgender person automatically receives.
You know what's interesting, Mark? We talked about this whole cisgender thing. Elon Musk on X has now considered the word cis to be a slur. And that's how X's policy is, if you use that.
Wow.
A step in the right direction.
I hope so. Well, of course, the slides go on from there to talk about the woke orthodoxy, part of which includes this concept of intersectionality, which is multiple overlapping spheres of oppression, whether they come in the form of racism, classism, heterosexism, their term, not mine. And these don't exist independently, according to the slide material. Multiple forms of discrimination interrelate, creating a system of oppression. George, this is the culture now in the entire San Diego
They're just drilling
Unified
that.
School, drilling it
drilling
over and over and over again. Another slide. Where are you on your ally process? Ally spelled A-L-L-Y. Now, this is a term of art, right? You want to be in this category. And they've got some boxes here with sayings. Well, I've never thought about being an ally, which should lead to the next one. Could I help someone by being an ally? Again, George, this is to teachers. I think I should learn more about becoming an ally. I will start letting people know that I am a safe space. Proud in my identity, I will advocate for others. And then they have this other little box that says, you may go back and forth between these two boxes. I will start letting people know that I'm a safe space and I'm proud in my identity. And that's okay if you go back and forth. You've got to embrace these concepts. The title of ally isn't important, but helping people is.
Mark, I think they just violated their own gender pronoun policy. The title of the slide, where are you on your ally process? That should be them.
Well, we should point this out to them. Absolutely. Man. That's right. Well, this brings up another point, George. They can't abide by their own rules. It's impossible. Human interaction,
they're always changing.
It does not work that way. Another slide is out for safe schools. We need to have visual displays of support. In fact, this is sort of a tagline, out for safe schools. You're starting to see posters put up all over the place for this. Let students know where safe spaces exist. The resources at the back of the badge. And then we don't have time to go into all of this because we want to get to yet one more example. But I did want to make one point, George, and that is that in the San Diego Unified School District, they actually have a student information change request. This is a formal document now that goes on record at the school district. And you and I have seen these kind of examples before. And so the students now have an option. Option one is for you to share this information with teachers and other staff. And it's asking the question, are parents and guardians supportive, ostensibly, of your non-conforming gender identity? And if they're not, then you can use option two, which means we're going to keep all this secret. We're only going to talk about your identity here on school campuses and with other students, even though you've publicly come out on student campus. This is not going to be shared either with your parents or other legal entities. So, George, they're setting up a secret society on school campuses. And the same thing exists. We have one more example from the Santa Ana Unified School District in Orange County. So this is a traditionally, conservative, sort of leans red county in the state of California, but Santa Ana Unified School District is anything but. And it's pretty much the same thing. Slides on names and pronouns, how to use them. The difference in this one, though, that I think we should point out is that they cite chapter and verse of legal support.
That's what I wanted to point out, and especially this first bold statement where they come out with saying students have the right to be addressed by the names and gender pronouns of their choice. That's not true.
It is not true. In fact, they cite Education Code 221.5, and it says nothing about the use of pronouns. Absolutely nothing. So here's what it says. It's the policy of the state that elementary and secondary school classes and courses, including non-academic and elective classes and courses, be conducted without regard to the sex, meaning biological sex, of the pupil enrolled in these classes and courses. The school district shall not require a pupil of one biological sex to enroll in a particular class or course unless the same class or course is also required of a pupil of the opposite sex, meaning there are only two sexes. And yet this training material is deliberately obscuring what the law actually says to promote their woke ideology. And George, the rest of the document continues to misconstrue what the law actually says.
Well, Mark, that's all the time we have for today. Elon Musk truly is right. This is a woke mind virus, and it's just eating up people alive. And unfortunately, that includes not just our most precious children, but now it also includes teachers who are basically the medium through which this mind virus is being inserted into the minds of our children. So if you are a public school teacher here in California or somewhere else in the country, please start doing something about this. Fight back against your union. Get out of the Public Teachers Union, the NEA, the AFT, the CTA here in California, or whatever your state union is, and your local union. If you're paying union dues, that money is going to your local, your state, and your national, and this is the kind of filth that it supports. So we encourage you to go to our website at protectourkidsnow.org. You can find a lot of different information there, especially brochures, videos. If you want Mark and I to come and speak to a parent group or to your church or wherever it is, we will gladly do that in person or virtually. And if you feel like you can partner with us as well, there's a donate button and you can become a friend of the ministry here at POK. Thank you for listening, and we will continue this with our next episode on Say What?
You've been listening to Say What, the radio ministry of Protect Our Kids, where they seek to inform and equip concerned citizens about the crisis in American public education and the forces working against our children. Join us at this same time every Saturday as attorney Mark Schneider and Pastor George Rosca Jr. unpack the issues so that we can better safeguard our nation's children. And join Mark and George right here next week at this same time for another episode of Say What.